Welcome to another episode of Our Interesting Times. It is my pleasure to have Mark Hackard back on the show. Mark is an independent foreign policy analyst. Mark is an independent foreign policy analyst. He studies the intersection of political culture, religion, and strategic issues, which he approaches from a traditionalist-conservative perspective. Mark's online project is Soul of the East, a website dedicated to introducing the English-speaking world to valuable aspects of Russian political and religious thought.
Part 2 of an interview with Mark Hackard on Victor Rothschild as a Soviet spy.
They were sort of the Soviets and the countries of the Soviet bloc were sort of inoculated in some way to what the West would bring in the post-Cold War period. Not to a complete, countries on the western fringes like Poland and Czech Republic are certainly more susceptible to this stuff in some ways, but you do see nonetheless a stronger emphasis on national culture, identity, national sovereignty, things like that. The inherent good of the family, things that shouldn't be taken for granted, but unfortunately here in the West, affairs have gone far downhill.
Yeah, there's something to that if you have an identity, particularly an ethno-religious identity, and that is manifested in a state, in territory. You have a defense against sort of the toxic culture of the West, which is your idea of the West where these things aren't supposed to be. We're supposed to be at least America. It's a proposition nation, so there's no ethno-religious basis to being an American, and that's
right. You could fly down from some far off planet in outer space and theoretically become an American.
Yeah, and open up.
America is an amazing country in so many ways, but yeah, the foundation when people talk about America is an idea, it's not a land or a people, it's an idea. Well, you're turning it into a bloodless abstraction.
Yeah. And
it swallows, everything it consumes.
And that lack of identity means that people are effectively atomized or divided, and they're easily manipulated by the oligarchs who control the levers of economic and cultural power.
And that's exactly how it's devised, I think. Yeah,
there's an example like in Poland where there's been a lot of pushback from sort of the Western culture, gay rights and these things. Sexual liberation, and some of the protests that you might see in the West have no effect in Poland because the Poles identify themselves as Polish Catholics.
Right.
Yeah.
And there, similar things going on in Russia. The Russian Orthodox Church has kind of slowly but steadily regained made its imprint on Russian culture felt again, and more people were, kind of trickling back in, which is good. And places like Bulgaria, across
Hungary,
Hungary certainly. You have their kicking out Western NGOs and.
That's one thing that Putin recently did within the last few years, and it's considered illiberal by Western standards. But he kicked out Jehovah's Witnesses and the Scientology because people who are savvy to these type of missionary work, these are assets for Western intelligence. These aren't.
Of course, yes, they function as fronts for intelligence operations. That's a given, and it doesn't take. Too much. You don't have to be too clever to figure that one out. But and they're also tremendously destructive to the national fabric. Wherever these toxic cults go, they inevitably will play a role in undermining the society as is constituted in favor of. Dissolving it and setting up some kind of, paradise for multinationals to come in and prey on people.
Yeah, and put in their corporate their chain restaurants. So
yeah,
a food court in Moscow looks just the same as a food court in a mall in Houston, Texas, or something.
Yeah, and that's that. Unfortunately, that is just that's an unfortunate reality of you could whether east or west. Moscow is tremendously cosmopolitan, and it retains still a lot of its character. But you also have these enormous shining skyscrapers that look exactly like skyscrapers, whether they be in Dubai or Tokyo or Boston or where. It's there's always that standardization at work, but it is nonetheless important to kind of push back against the deeper cultural and spiritual aspects of that, which are so poisonous.
Yeah, and because you want the global monoculture, because that way it makes, at the very least, it makes marketing easier. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Which is what what is marketing? But it's another application of psychological warfare.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Rothschild. Here he is. He's Victor Rothschild, head of Soviet, or rather British intelligence. He's he was a major. He was high up in MI5. Yeah. And here he is.
Considered a wise man of British intelligence later on.
And he's feeding intelligence to the Soviet Union, sort of managing this stuff. Isn't that kind of sort of like a does that symbolize the entire Cold War, that type of relationship?
Yes, a bit. I would say because the Cold War dialectic was, as you alluded to, sort of set up with the outcome of World War II, and the division of Europe, and that of course cannot be minimized on either side. That soldiers, whether the Red Army or the U.S. or the British or whoever, whatever nation, fought and died so that there could be some semblance of peace. It was it made a divided world, and that divided world kind of came into being because I don't think it was the original plan, but really if you look at the kind of the founding of the UN, the United Nations, and what the major the people who matter in the West, people like Rockefeller or Bernard Baruch, the major heads of financial dynasties, what they wanted was a world government, and that's what the UN was supposed to be. And the fact that...
And that shouldn't be a controversial statement, what you just said there.
No,
some,
not at all.
Some people will hear that and say, well, this guy's a conspiracy theorist.
Oh, yeah.
But,
what is... Yeah, the UN world government... of course that's why the UN was set up.
Yeah, but didn't the son, the banking family, Wahlberg, in 1947 say we'll have world government, whether by consent or by force, either way we'll have it?
Yes.
In front of the Senate, in front of the U.S. Senate,
right.
He says this.
Right.
So,
right, and that's always, that seems to be, in the interest of, transnational banking and commercial elites, because they can move, money, resources, people, entire demographic flow, like you're seeing with the refugee crisis in the Middle East, which was brought on by these unjust wars. They can move all these across borders and shape the world to their liking.
Yeah, if your workers have organized and now they're demanding higher wages, well, how do we handle this? Well,
let's bring in new workers.
Yeah, just destabilize the South American country and bring them all north.
Yeah,
and we don't care what happens in the neighborhood.
And it's a bad deal for everyone.
Yeah,
and of course they'll manipulate with. Go ahead.
But Mark, it makes economic sense.
Yeah,
this is the anomaly.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, it makes economic sense for a few ultra rich billionaires.
Yeah,
it's good for them, so we should like it too.
So I mean, this is goes back to philosophy, the sort of the British cosmology, right?
Right.
that you talk
sort
about.
of based on Newtonian physics and Adam Smith and sort of that empirical worldview that sort of the world ends up being kind of disintegrating into quantity. And pure quantity.
It's it's the world. It's gravity and inertia, and it's just physics playing out. It's not moral agents acting.
Yeah, it's not a moral universe. It's just these corporations that that exploit people. Well, they're just atoms. They're just doing their thing.
It's just creative destruction. Just creative destruction.
Yeah.
And
you can't blame the almighty market. Which that in itself I think the best way to look at it is, and people like to blame. I mean, my issue is I don't think we can blame one. I don't know, but plenty of people, and I've seen this. Want to get into it's the Jesuits or the Jews or whatever. I mean, look. Here's the thing. This is. The best model is basically, and Jay Dyer again. I give him credit for this. It's the model of these elites is one of criminal families or sort of criminal syndicates, organizations. That's the way they operate, at least practically. But they have the power of propaganda. They have the power of entire state bureaucracies at their disposal, so they can. And again, and they have academia. They fund through the foundations. The direction of scholarly studies and so on. So they can create nationalisms. They can engineer social movements and
feminism, consumerism.
Yeah. Right. All these phenomena. They don't just appear organically. They are in fact engineered and driven in a certain direction, and what comes to my mind is that when the Wehrmacht rolled into Kiev, say, and then came the Einsatzgruppen from the SS, and they lined up at Babi Yar. They lined up, the city's Jews and were executing them. Well, there were no Rothschilds or Warburgs, among those people. They were just ordinary people. So that's ordinary people tend to get demonized through these ideologies and through sort of jingoism and ramping up of chauvinist type nationalism and blaming, just like we see today with the Russia gate. People are being told, if you speak with a Russian, you're speaking with Putin. It's just absurd. So that's kind of, or the British footballers who are told that, watch out for the Russian women. They're working for the FSB and they will.
That's another thing, is the whole idea of Russia uniquely using sexual espionage or honey traps, and the whole Western culture's a honey trap, right? The whole Western world's a honey trap.
Yes.
Look at Hollywood, for Pete's sake. I mean,
look at Hollywood.
You can't get away from sex. I mean, it's
This somehow, and of course, the Russians run. They have what are called swallows and ravens, and this is famous during the Cold War. With East German intelligence, Marcus Wolf was a big proponent of using ravens, meaning male sex operatives, to seduce the female secretaries. Because it's as Harry Rositsky, he wrote a good book on the KGB back in the early '80s, but he was a CIA veteran, and he had a good phrase about that men get and forget, women give and forgive, and he was applying that specifically to sex and romance and things like so. And so men will just have sex and then be like, well, so what? But women get emotionally involved more often than not. And so Marcus Wolf, among others, and I think I have a story of a KGB raven too. He was actually an Italian journalist who was working for the KGB in West Germany during the 50s. But Wolf of the the Stasi, the HVA, their foreign intelligence, used ravens to great effect and was very successful in suborning these.
Wasn't
lovely secretaries,
Yeah, wasn't Roald Dahl also known for that?
Roald Dahl was he? I don't know I know he was in MI9, I think. And I think he was involved in. He was definitely British intelligence.
He was part of the irregulars over here.
Okay,
and he apparently he was a dashing RAF officer, and apparently played a role in sort of in getting America to support Britain by. Involved himself with women, and there's a story. It was Kay Summersby, who was Eisenhower's British mistress, who he wanted to run away with.
Interesting. Wow.
And this is post-war, but there's an account where President Truman was trying to sell the Cold War agenda, the Truman Doctrine, to Republican Senator Arthur Vandenberg, and he was a traditional Midwestern, non-interventionist, isolationist Republican. Skeptical of these things, but upon hearing Harry Truman's plan, he supposedly told the president, "Well, Harry, you better scare the hell out of the American people." But he was considered to be an opponent to these things, to these interventionist schemes. But he apparently switched his position on it 180 degrees after spending an evening with a blonde woman. So.
Obviously they had the goods on him.
Yeah, and that's how policy is made.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's not this clean process like you're given in your civics textbook. Oh, you have the 3 branches of government, and there's checks and balances. No, it's done through espionage, blackmail, and overt action. Yeah,
but my point is to somehow pin the Russians as being uniquely evil when it comes to using sex as a weapon, exploiting women. Really, the whole Western culture is based on exploiting women sexually. And I don't. Again, I'm not treating this as a feminist critique, because I think women are a big part of letting themselves be exploited.
That's part of the dialectic. You have, especially when the establishment supports both figures like Gloria Steinem and Hugh Hefner.
Yeah, or Marilyn Monroe.
Or Gloria Steinem posing in Playboy.
Yeah, doing that. Or just the idea of the Hollywood starlets, they're 1 minute they're sex objects and they're marketing themselves with that, then they're raging feminists,
Right.
Maybe part of that is psychology, but that's all part of the sort of the I think sort of that the dissonance or internal contradiction of that is a whole part of the psychological warfare that you get with the sexual revolution and the whole Rockefeller agenda. Sexual liberation is a weapon for political control, and people don't recognize the if you give into those, if you give into your passions, and you become a slave to your passions, and those people who are in the position to satisfy your appetites can control you.
That's exactly right.
And that's what the whole Western project seems to be about. Largely is be enslaving people to consumerism and debt and these things, and sex is a huge part of that.
Right. That really is the religion of mammon. Is to now whether it be through just capitalist theory that somehow everyone being greedy will ultimately work out for the greater good.
Yeah.
No, people are enslaved to their passions, and it's inherently destructive. So it will lead to, as we see, it leads to the disintegration of the culture.
And this is reason why the Western project, the Masonic Western project, is so hostile to traditional culture, is because it's through traditional culture. Expressed through ethnic identity and religion, these are firewalls or stumbling blocks or bulwarks against the blandishments of Hollywood and Madison Avenue and these things, and they have to be denigrated and characterized in very unflattering ways, like any traditional backward or retrograde or something.
Right, and all that is in the tradition of propaganda and psychological warfare. There's, there's no hard fast line dividing what exact. I mean, we see it. We may categorize it with our own eyes, but really, what is advertising? What is propaganda? What is entertainment? What is psychological warfare? All those things can be fit into one.
Yeah, and even with the Soviet Union, these things, even the Germans, the Nazis, their propaganda was so crude compared to propaganda of one thing the British and the Americans, and it's become so well. We've internalized it to the point we don't even recognize that.
Right. It's given as reality when we think of propaganda. Right, we think of clumsy Soviet posters talking about the 5-year plan, or some really some kind of Third Reich, maybe like Leni Riefenstahl or something like that, where
Triumph
it's
of
much
the Will
more
or
subtle.
something.
Yeah.
But really, when you think about what's more powerful, Triumph of the Will, or your typical television sitcom displaying some sort of dysfunctional blended family and changing ideas of what it means to have a family or live, what's normal, what's normative anymore, and these things, and with whether it's music, entertainment, these things, and this toxic culture that's put out there is entertainment.
It's amazing that it's an entire barrage of toxicity, and how flexible and sustainable it has been because it is a profit-driven model. I think that explains a lot of it, but nonetheless, it does seem to be atrophying. There was a good conversation with Jay Dyer the other day about. I mentioned Jay because I've worked with him for so long now, but the boomer generation and
I heard that,
and how propaganda was really perfected during the boomer era, and the boomer generation. And this is not, my parents are boomers, and I love them more than anyone. But rather, this is to say that the entire generation was zapped with propaganda, and that really was, for some reason, that was propaganda at its most effective. Whereas today, even though the technology has been, you could say it's been advanced, and the bandwidth has been expanded, and it's ever more present. It seems to be atrophying, and it seems to be producing diminishing returns, and people are just becoming cynical and switching off or not believing it more and more. So it is interesting to see that, how even though the full power of the media is unleashed, with kind of you could say like psychic alchemy of the entire population in mind, it doesn't seem to be succeeding the way it had been in previous generations.
It might be because now there's a marked decline in the quality of life.
Yes, I think that might have something to do with it as well.
Yeah, where people are they're. I mean, you can only be amused and distracted for so long before it starts to have a real effect on, if you grew up in a broken family or something, a single parent home, never had a father around, these things, and you don't have any siblings because you only had came from a family of 2 or something, or you didn't have a community with these things. I was looking back at my childhood, how different it was in the 70s. Compared to a lot of people maybe coming up in the late 80s or 90s, and they compared to that to now, and just how much more freedom I had as a child in the 70s compared to what most kids experience today, and just sort of the I could go off and be free, goof off, take risks, maybe do things I shouldn't be doing. But I got lucky; I never got in too much trouble, nor did I get hurt. But that was a boy's life, and you could come home and there was a mom and dad there.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, there was a lot of psychological warfare because my mom and dad had been raised on, newsreels, and their understanding was the newspaper and these things. And of course, then television and these things. How did that affect people with television? And no
one was questioning the Gulf of Tonkin or things like that.
No, the president said it happened. It happened.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then you go to Watergate. That created sort of a faux cynicism because Watergate was sort of stage managed as well. It wasn't like the Washington Post that got into the bottom of the Watergate scandal. That was another misdirection. Another controlled dialectic, limited hangout type thing. But yeah, it's you reach I guess you call it, maybe you reach peak cynicism or something, and
the saturation point for all this stuff I think has been passed, and it's losing its effectiveness I think on more and more people, and I don't know, the media the media doesn't know what to do with, if you look at channels like Fox News. Well, I mean, the average age of the viewership is something like 70.
Yeah, whenever it's always somebody who's 70, 75 years old watching that, because people get their information differently now. It's
right,
and so maybe this propaganda has to be more sophisticated. It's hard to say how it will play out.
Yeah, and they're certainly trying hard, but it seems to be fragmenting.
Yeah, I see this in strange memes. A lot of anti-male stuff. You got that last year with Harvey Weinstein. It's kind of morphed into a anti-male campaign.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. that was clever.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
Credit
where credit is due.
A degenerate Hollywood, power broker. Somehow that's supposed to be
somehow that reflects on all. On all men.
Oh man.
Yeah. What do we do with these male pigs? Because these gross Hollywood moguls or whatever, up to nasty stuff.
Even things like this whole the bullying thing.
There's another one.
How it becomes a crisis. When I was growing up, these were kind of altercations that people had at school that as a boy you learn to navigate and deal with.
No, bullying. I mean, bullying's real. It is not. It makes me angry to.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that on one end kids had intact families, so a kid would grow up knowing how to fight
how to deal with those hardships,
how to deal with it, and the other end you'd have the bully perhaps being disciplined by responsible parents too. Right. This is the problem when you break apart the family. Is it's almost like I've made the analogy. I've heard the analogy. Right? I actually borrowed it from someone. But it's almost like when you split the atom. It's almost like you release this energy, and so many things ripple from it. The society begins to break down because in the past these things were handled kind of informally. The institutions were there to handle these things without having policy. These having zero tolerance policies and these things. I mean, I used to have like fights in the parking in the playground, and a teacher wouldn't even intervene. It would just stop. And
by my time it was a little bit different, but nonetheless it is very strange because the noise about bullying is, it seems like bullying is just, it's used as a cudgel to put certain social agendas.
Yeah. It's almost like they seem to do like with rape becomes sexual, someone charged with rape, all of a sudden someone's charged with sexual misconduct. What is that? Whereas bullying, I mean, obviously if you have the classic, someone's being assaulted or something, you obviously want intervention, but it gets all thrown into the same bundle. It doesn't mean anything anymore.
Well, yes, because, and it's just strange because anything will be construed as bullying and will be used for a teaching moment.
Yeah.
And social engineering.
Yeah, so that's like the internet bullying. Whatever happened to sticks and stones will break my bones, but names will never hurt me, right?
Yeah.
You know, and then because everyone's so delicate, you know.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, people are taught that if they come across an opposing opinion, they're supposed to recoil in horror and break down.
Yeah, it's what's called microaggression, I think is the term.
Yeah, microaggression.
On all places of college campus, you know.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, the university tradition of the scholastics has really come a long way.
So, yeah. Oh, they're produced little mouse red guards. That's the idea.
Yeah.
That. So, well, Mark, final. I know we strayed a little way away from Rothschild, but I think it actually is connected because that's what we're seeing is sort of the broad cultural agenda that we're seeing promoted by families like the Rothschilds.
Yeah, sort of really the best way to look at them is mafia families. I mean, I think ultimately it does have spiritual and esoteric roots that go back in history, but really these are sort of like criminal families or kind of criminal elites. You know, these syndicates that have the power of the state at their disposal and can sort of fashion and engineer ideologies and turn, you know, groups of people against each other and get you know, one group hating the other, and you know, whether that be men and women or different ethnicities, or, you know, with the goal of breaking up the family, or creating wars to stimulate refugee flows and sort of waging demographic warfare that way. It's sort of high crimes on a grand scale. You know, all the world's a stage.
Mm-hmm. That's right, and when you a character like Rothschild's, which is exposed by this by Serov in his diary, is that he appeared to be sort of like stage managing the Cambridge Five.
Yes, which is fascinating, and Serov mentions, you know, we didn't fully trust him, and that's also that's worth noting because in intelligence, a network will of course transmit its information to, say, you know, in this case, Moscow Center, you know, and with Serov saying they didn't fully trust them, and that's a reason why Philby, when he was, you know, when he finally made it to the USSR and, you know, expected to be feted as a great hero, but he was, you know, they were pretty low key with him, and they didn't. I mean, they treated him well, but they didn't fully trust him. He didn't get KGB officer rank like he wanted, like his colleague George Blake actually did. The KGB obviously had a lot more trust in Blake, but he didn't get that, and so that kind of speaks to that suspicion, and the fact that Rothschild was feeding what they thought or what they knew to be disinformation at points. This shows in intelligence you have what the Russians call and the Germans call it, you know, Funkspiel, or the Russians call it radioigra or operativная игра. It means like operational or radio game, where an intelligence network of, you know, say Moscow Center's the NKVD's intelligence network in World War II, for example, the Red Orchestra in Western Europe and Germany was basically broken up or liquidated by the Gestapo. Okay, and the German counterintelligence was able to seize the leading figures of the network, but they kept it in place and they played back essentially what was disinformation to Moscow, right? So they kept on feeding. They kept the information flowing, with the under the guise that the Red Orchestra was still functioning, and kept sending information. Now the point of disinformation is that a lot of it could be good information, and that's for counterintelligence analysts to sort out. But the Soviets essentially they knew this. right? In the case of the Red Orchestra, and they were just milking the Gestapo for what they would send, and that operation was actually under the direct control of the head of Gestapo, Heinrich Müller, which is interesting. And I can talk about that on another occasion. But so the Soviets were milking the Gestapo, which had the Red Orchestra under their control, and they weren't letting on that they knew what had happened. Now, in the case of Rothschild, you could have something similar where they were milking Rothschild and the Cambridge Five, and the Cambridge Five did produce a lot of real valuable intelligence, but at the same time, there was some element of disinformation there, and obviously mistrust arose, and that's what Sirov pointed out. So it's not a totally managed dialectic in the sense that, like there was a conspiracy theorist named, what was his name? William, his name is eluding me right now. He died in 2001 in a shootout with police. I know
what you're talking about.
William Cooper, right?
Bill Cooper. Bill Cooper.
Yeah. Bill Cooper.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Bill Cooper said that something about like the head of the CIA and KGB would meet in the Arctic Circle on, they would be taken to the Arctic Circle on nuclear submarines or something insane like that. No, that's not, that's not the case. But of course, you have occasions like, the fact that Rockefeller could indeed land his plane in Moscow.
Yes,
So certainly, the Soviets knew, who ruled the West, and they wanted to be on decent terms with the financial elites, but they weren't under, I would say, certainly in the Stalin period and after, they were not under any kind of direct Western control. It was more of a matter of shaping the dialectic, and I mean it really is sort of a big. I mean it's inherently a gamble, the games that these banksters play.
Yeah.
It really is, you are literally, playing with and extinguishing the lives of millions in the process.
Yeah, it's like the so-called Hitler project,
Right.
Hitler, a British agent. Well, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by Hitler being a British agent?
Yeah.
I mean, Hitler played his role in I think ultimately serving out Anglo-American strategy. And you needed a figure like Hitler to destroy Germany, to set up the conditions of the Second World War. Someone who could be lured into invading Russia and these things.
And he still plays his part today. Every single bad guy
yes.
every single target of Washington foreign policy ends up being called Hitler.
Yeah, I mean, there's enough in there. There's enough tantalizing stuff there. I think good example is Helmut Schacht was good friends with
yes,
what's his name? The Bank of England, Montague Norman.
Montague Norman. Yeah, they were both Masons, and
and of course the Freemasonic thing is an important thing, because that's where you get the organizational or relationship for subversion, the type of things that should be happening with intrigue and subversion and these things, even moral subversion. If you look at the whole Masonic project, that seems like what the West.
It's full spectrum subversion.
Yeah, it's full spectrum. It's about doing away with ethnic differences, doing away indifferentism, right? Promoting indifferentism, ecumenism with religions and these things.
Interestingly, the date for the first ecumenist, the International Religious Congress, was on September 11th, 1893. I think it was in.
That date.
That an interesting date to be sure. Yeah,
I think the same day that also broke ground for the Pentagon was September 11th. 1941. So
amazing. Yeah. So and when you see those dates over and over again, you have to question not just those, but it's mighty strange, and numerology as archaic and esoteric as that all sounds, with these types of characters, it does play its role.
So. Yeah, secret handshakes. smoke and mirrors, these things.
Yeah,
and that's what intelligence strategy is. It's trickery. It's smoke and mirrors. It's
absolutely
it's magician. That's what what's his name? Go back to Elizabeth in England.
Yeah, John Dee.
John Dee was a alchemist and a musician, and it's all about and occulted knowledge in these things. And
right, and he was into the occult, and you have to wonder. Well, he was obviously, at some level, he was a scam artist, and at some level, who knows what kind of dark stuff he was up to, and you just. It all gets very murky.
Yeah. So, well, Mark, I had you a long time. I want to thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
So, any final comments or anything? Before I let you go?
I don't think so. Hopefully, I'll have some new material pretty soon. I'm kind of mulling over what exactly to translate or write about. There's always fascinating stuff. One is, this last story was partially set in Lebanon, but I might do another one on. It's kind of an apocryphal story now about how how Soviet Spetsnaz killed some terrorists in Lebanon in 1985 when some employees of the Soviet embassy were taken hostage there.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
yeah, and that was actually it was a KGB operation. It was the first chief directorate's special forces unit, Voimpel, and I have an official accounting of the or official version of the operation from the SBR, and I also have the take on it from the guy who directed it, Yuri Drozdov, who was the head of Directorate S within the KGB First Chief Directorate, which is where Voimpel was situated. So he goes into more detail, and he talks about what exactly they did, and as far as knocking off certain figures but while the official version is very what would be the word cleaned up, but still very, very interesting. So I might do that in order to show a real Russian assassination operation as opposed to the silly stuff that gets put on the news. Yeah, the Skripal affair, whatever else they'll throw our way.
Yeah. So anything, polonium or that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, let's paint the sushi restaurant with polonium. Yeah.
Okay, well, Mark, thanks a lot. I'll let you go. That's Mark Hackard. Again, that is espionagearchive.com.
EspionageHistoryArchive.com.
EspionageHistoryArchive.com.
Yeah.
Is your primary website. Okay, well, great. Okay, well, thank you for coming on. I'll let you go. I'll post this in a few days. When I'll send you the link.
Okay, thanks a lot, Tim.
Take it easy. Good night, then.
Okay, night.
Bye-bye.